Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's another episode of Scoops. And we got a lot to speak about this time. And one that is a topic very personal and very close to me as someone that's a tournament organizer that, goes to all these big events, the EVOs, the CEOs, the combo breakers. Like, I'm a part of all of those, right? And so we're going to be talking about world tours. And the reason that we're going to be talking about world tours is because it seems like every single notable game is kind of missing the mark on what to do with their world tours. And different games are going to support different types of formats and this and that, but it seems like pretty much every large game is missing the mark in some way. And so I picked out some examples to talk about today. We're going to talk about what these tours are missing, how they could be better, and why it is so detrimental for them to be messing up to the extent they are. Right. So, of course, we have to start with this fucking game. We have to start with this game. Dragon Ball FighterZ. I have made 2 videos on Dragon Ball FighterZ World Tour in the past. I did one covering the history of the World Tour, and I also did another one covering specifically this year's World Tour because they changed some things up. They announced it late. There are some things, right? And so if you want to see either of those videos, you can check the description. I'll leave the links there. But this year, they decided to switch things up. And some things are good and some things are bad is pretty much the overarching theme here. What are the good things? The good things that in previous World Tours, Dragon Ball FighterZ had way too much of an emphasis on online events. Like far too much. Ever since the pandemic and they switched to the World Championship, the online events were just weighted way more than the offline events. For example, the last World Tour, you could get more, the maximum amount of points you could gain on online events was more than the maximum amount of points you could gain from offline events, which is pretty crazy. Someone that wins 4 big online events had more points than people that won 2 majors offline. Really bad, right? Fighting games are putting more and more emphasis on like good netcode and good online environments. And so I think devs are making the mistake of thinking that because online is more important, or maybe our netcodes are getting better. Not the case for this game, but because our online netcodes are getting better, we can get away with like making the tour focus more online. That's a bad thing. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that's the pretty much one of the biggest changes with the Dragon Ball FighterZ World Tour is that they completely removed the online aspect. There's actually no online events that count towards the World Tour this year for Dragon Ball FighterZ. It's not a part of the tour at all. There's the power events, which are the events that you guys know. These ones right here, right? There's these events. They announced UFA later, right? There's 7 offline designated majors, and then after that, there are the Tenkaichi events, which are opt-in, the community tournaments, and they're all offline, right? Only offlines, no onlines. Global leaderboard, meaning everyone's competing on the same point leaderboard, which is generally a good thing. Global leaderboards is a pretty positive thing whenever we're talking about World Tour, but it calls into question, right? If you're only going to do offline events, is it really a World Tour, right? Is it really? Because the issue that you run into is that, these events are great. These events are fantastic, but it costs a lot to travel to fighting game majors. It's not cheap. It takes a lot of money and resources for people to get to these events. And so if you have to go to multiple of these in order to even have a shot at qualifying, how many people is that really realistic for, right? Not that many people. It's a very small subgroup of people. And so it creates a feeling that, your World Tour is like kind of pay to win in some aspect. Of course, you have to be skilled at the game and you have to perform well. I'm not discrediting that at all, but only the people that have the bandwidth or the money to travel to multiple events and actually be able to rack up points, assuming you don't win an event and auto qualify, which isn't most people, they're the only ones that are actually fighting for a chance to qualify. and it creates that feeling that, you know, not everyone is really included, and that's why excluding online altogether is a bad thing. Yes, this game's netcode is dog shit, but allowing for people all around the world to actually compete, to be in the World Tour, is pretty important when we're calling something the World Tour, right? Offline scenes are much harder to have than online, you know, online scenes, and so like it's difficult. Like the minimum event count to qualify for an offline event is 16. There are regions in the United States that have trouble getting 16 for this game, especially now, right? You know, that the player base is, you know, kind of shrunk. And so like there's a lot of places, even in, you know, the big regions, that have trouble like hitting these numbers. And so like what it's saying is that if you can't hit these numbers, you don't fucking matter, right? And, you know, there is a ton of regions that would be able to hit these numbers if online was included. You don't have to make them worth as much as the offlines, and you shouldn't, obviously, but I'm sure those regions would appreciate being included in some way, right? And so that's kind of where Dragon Ball FighterZ fucks up, is that they went hyperbolic. They knew they were way too focused on online at first, and then they like flipped the script and went the complete opposite extreme by removing online altogether, and that's not good. It's not a good thing. It's just bad. Also, another thing, really short World Tour, right? The time period for the World Tour, right? The first offline, the first, you know, Power Plus event for Dragon Ball FighterZ Evo, August 4th through 6th, and the World Tour ends this month in November. There is one last offline in December, UFA. But the opt-in part, the Tenkaichi events, end in November. And so like that's really not long, right? That's not a long time for people to, you know, rack up these points. And whenever they announce the World Tour, it's not a lot of time for people to plan out like, oh, okay, I need to go to this event, and then, you know, normal people that don't have unlimited bankroll and need to space out which events they go to, right? You're not giving them a lot of planning time, and I think that's like kind of a big miss. Because like, you know, how many people have the money to go to Rev Major, which is in the Philippines, and then the week after go to Mexico? Do you guys have money like that? I don't. And I gotta imagine that most players just don't, right? Especially if you're unsponsored. You're coming out of pocket, you're spending PTO, you're, you know, really on your own dime, and that's all for a chance to even like have a shot at qualifying, let alone like qualifying itself. So yeah, missed the mark. Dragon Ball FighterZ really fucked up this year. It really feels like laziness. Like I said, shortest it's ever been. Format is still pretty bad, and they use the World Tour as a band-aid for delaying rollback on top of that, which makes it even worse, right? They're like, you know, there's no rollback, but hey, we got another World Tour. Great, we don't fucking care. Give us rollback, right? Okay, moving on. Next, Mortal Kombat. So Mortal Kombat is an interesting one because it just came out, right? It just came out, and their tour just started. It started at ECT. So a few things to talk about. Firstly, they announced their Pro Competition is their World Tour name. Their Pro Competition, they announced it far too close to the Pro Competition starting. What do I mean by that? They announced the Pro Competition starting like at the end, like towards the end of September. The first event on the Pro Competition was ECT, which was October 20th. Right. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. You're not giving people enough time to prepare, right? You're not giving people enough time to like I said, schedule out, like, I need to go to this and this and this if I want to have a shot at qualifying, right? Obviously, everyone can't go to everything, and so people are going to have to make sacrifices. Hey, I can go to this, but that means I can't go to this and this, right? I have a shot at qualifying if I, you know, and along the way, while the competition's going on, you're supposed to be talking about, you know, you're supposed to be making that assessment as you go to events. You see how you place, how many points do I have? Let me check the leaderboard. What do I need to go to? okay, I need some more points than I thought I would need, so I'm going to go to this event on top of that, right? You're not giving people a lot of time to do that if you're announcing that ECT is a part of the World Tour, 2 to 3 weeks before the event. That's not a lot of time. By 2 to 3 weeks before a major, right? An overwhelming majority of people have already made the decision on whether they're going to attend or not, right? And so like, it's super unfair because if you've already said, hey, I'm not going to go to ECT because Mortal Kombat 1 is my main game, and it's not going to count for points or whatever, right? If you already made that decision, and then they're like, oh no, it does count. In fact, it's an auto qualifier for the finals. Suddenly you have to spend a bunch of extra money to like do last minute flights, to do last minute hotels, to do last minute registration. All that stuff's expensive if you even have that option. And it just feels really unfair and really detrimental to the player base. So they messed up on their announcement, first of all. Second of all, they focus way too much on onlines. On the pro competition, there's only 4 global offline events. These 4 down here. Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So if you look at these, we have ECT, which already happened. We have UFA, which is coming up. We have Comic-Con Experience, which is in December, which, by the way, these two are really close together. I really don't like that either, right? Two of your, like, if you're putting events on the highest echelon of importance, they should be spaced out, right? They should be really, really spaced out so that it's feasible for people to go to multiple, right? Doing an event at the end of November and then turning around and doing another global offline a week or a week and a half afterwards, right? Because it's December 3rd. That's also really bad because how many people are realistically going to be able to go to both back to back like that? Not many. And then the last one is Combo Breaker, which is really, really weird to me because you kind of condensed all of these events together. End of October into end of November into the beginning of December is the first 3, right? And then Combo Breakers in May, right? Combo Breakers in May. So between December and May, there's nothing. There's nothing in terms of notable offlines that people should care about. That's a big problem. That's a really, really big problem. What's going to happen is after Comic-Con Experience is done, there's going to be a time period where people just don't care about the tour or anything like that because there's no motivation. What are they working towards? Are you already preparing for Combo Breaker in May? It's like, that's not like realistic or like what people usually do when it comes to events like that. And so like you kind of kill your own momentum by squishing everything together and then spacing out a big event in between. So they really should have had way more offlines, especially for a new game. Like it's a brand new game. Mortal Kombat is the highest selling fighting game franchise. There's no reason why they shouldn't have more events as part of their tour, right? Just in general, especially given that, you know, the Mortal Kombat, like doing world tours, I think a lot of people don't really understand that it's kind of easier to do them than you think it is, right? There's a lot of legal stuff behind the scenes and, you know, getting approvals and whatnot. Yeah, sure, that's fine. But in terms of like making an event worth points, right? This is not Warner Brothers coming out and running the event themselves, right? They're going to other people. They're reaching out to other people's events and saying, hey, we want to legitimize it by making it worth, you know, this tier of event on the tour, right? Warner Brothers themselves do not have to like exert any effort to run these events, right? They're just giving importance to other events, which is a good thing because it, you know, that helps the scene and it helps events that are, you know, reputable and, you know, grassroots efforts, right? That's really good. But for that reason, I don't see any reason why you can't designate more events to be important on the tour because it doesn't take that much effort. Just reach out to the TOs, get your approvals. That does not take as long as you might think it does, right? So that's a really big missed opportunity. Very, very weird to me that they decided to go this way because I don't know. It's like really hard to wrap my head around. I don't know why things turned out this way for MK1, and it has affected people, right? It's not something that doesn't matter, right? But on top of that, what else have they messed up with? only four offlines, right? The rest of it's online, right? On top of that, Mortal Kombat is a game that doesn't have, let me open this real quick, this tweet from Coach Steve. Coach Steve made this tweet that's saying we still need crossplay. An entire scene is going to be cut off from playing in online pro competition events because they're incompetent, and that's not good. Sure, we need other features, but this is tragic, right? This is a great tweet, because if you're going to focus on online, right, if you're going to have an online focus tour, which you should never do, by the way, I think fighting games begin and end with offline experiences. Straight up. That should always be the focus. It should always be where you devote most of your effort to. But if you're going to make online an important part of the ecosystem, especially for your world tour, the online experience needs to be not only fair, but it needs to be good, right? We need to have good netcode. We have that for Mortal Kombat. You don't have to worry about that. But not having crossplay is actually a bigger deal than you might think it is, because not having crossplay, the PC port sucks. For those of you who don't know, the PC port of Mortal Kombat 1 is pretty bad, right? And generally, PC ports of Mortal Kombat are not great. And so, like, on top of the fact that there is no crossplay, so the people that are on PC that have no choice but to buy the game on PC can't participate in a lot of the biggest online events because there's no crossplay. You're double fucking your player base, right? That's just bad for pretty much everyone involved. If crossplay is a thing, events are bigger, right? People are able to participate in way more things. It's just really bad, right? So I shout outs to Coach Steve for bringing this up. This is really important, really important when it comes to world tours. Warner Brothers really missed the mark on this one. There's still time for them to try to right their wrong, but it's gonna take work, and they're gonna need to work. They're gonna need to make the changes soon, because like I said, like, the second global offline is this month, and the third one's shortly after that. You don't have a lot of time to make changes, right? You need to change things for the better if you want people to care about your world tour. And honestly, like, I've been paying attention to the NRS scene. Like, it's taken the wind out of a lot of players' sails. Like, a lot of people are demotivated by the way that the pro competition is formatted. Like, they're really not feeling it. That, on top of, you know, dealing with patch policy and all that, like, it just adds more and more things to worry about. People get exhausted and they don't care. It's just how it is. It's how it is. I wish it was not like that. I've seen posts from very reputable NRS players saying, I don't know what it is, but this MK1 just doesn't hit like the others. And after talking about it with other players, they come to the conclusion, like, yeah, I think the pro competition and the world tour, the way it is, really does take away a lot of that, because that's like motivation for competition for a lot of these people, right? If they don't have that, they're not as motivated to put in a ton of hours into the game. They're more incentivized to just do straight up content creation, right? Because it's more consistent and more lucrative in a lot of ways. So yeah, NRS, please make some changes. This is not good. Okay, let's talk about the next game. We got more. Let's talk about Street Fighter 6. So Street Fighter 6 is an interesting one because they actually had an event this past weekend that we watched, the French offline premiere. Where is Capcom messing up? Well, they're messing up in some places that other games are not. So Street Fighter 6 actually had probably the best fighting game launch of any fighting game ever. Probably. I think it's pretty hard to argue against that. Probably the strongest launch that fighting games has ever seen, by a pretty significant margin as well, right? The marketing around it was really good. Everyone was really hyped, this and that, right? That's great. The online's great. All of that. Launch was great. Not perfect, but it was great. And then Capcom Pro Tour happens, and it seems like they let the strong online, you know, the good online experience kind of go to their heads. So they have the $2 million Capcom Pro Tour. So they don't have prize pool issues like other ones do, right? Like, there's been a lot of discourse with the Mortal Kombat pro competition about, you know, the prize pools not being as high. Why are they not using skins to fund prize pools and whatnot, right? There should be more money trickling into the scene. Capcom doesn't have that issue, right? They come out of the gates, they say Capcom Cup, $2 million, over $2 million total, $1 million at Capcom alone, just Capcom Cup, right? $1 million. Now that's marketing cost, right? Like they spent all this money to like get people's heads to turn and say like, you know what? Taking Street Fighter seriously is something that is actually lucrative. And so they're going to, you know, take that leap that they never would have before. Good things. Good things. Launch, good. Prize pool, good. Format, bad, right? Why is the format bad? They put too much emphasis on online. Similarly to Mortal Kombat. They just are putting too much emphasis on online events. There are 48 players that qualify for Capcom Cup, right? Only 3 of those. Only 3 out of 48, ladies and gentlemen. 3 out of 48 are auto qualifiers from offline premieres, right? The people that win the offline premieres, they qualify directly for Capcom Cup. Only 3. 18 people qualify from online premieres. And then there's also World Warrior, which is like their World Warrior is like their it's like a sub online premieres. Like it's the way that I'll put it. They split it up into regions, and they have regular online events that are World Warrior events, and you rack up points, right? You rack up points from World Warrior events, and the people at the top of those leaderboards are the people that, you know, qualify. Only 3 people from offlines, right? That's a big deal, right? You're telling me 3 people winning an offline major for Street Fighter 6, right? But you're gonna let 18 people that win online events for Street Fighter 6. These are auto qualifiers, right? The online premieres are auto qualifiers. We already have some people that have qualified because of them. Snake Eyes, Phenom, right? Those are great players. But allowing this many more people to qualify through online premieres as opposed to offline demonstrates a really, really big lapse in judgment when it comes to like what is important to the fighting game community. Offlines are and should be the #1 priority, no matter what, right? This disparity should not be a thing. 18-3 is a travesty, right? And then on top of that, I'm pretty sure, someone can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but World Warrior events are kind of like pre-designated in a way. Like they have reached out to local scenes that, you know, have legitimacy in the game, and they're empowering them by saying, hey, you're now a World Warrior event, right? Like, so for example, Salt Mine League does some stuff in Europe, you know, stuff like that. And so that's great, but why is it only online, right? That doesn't make sense. There needs to be way more offline premieres with a game as big as this, because people are playing, right? People are playing Street Fighter 6. And it would have had the opportunity to do a ton of offlines. You don't even need to make them premieres, right? They don't even necessarily need to be premieres. But why aren't World Warriors, right? Instead of it being like strictly online, why don't you do another tier of events below premieres that are offlines? And you support regionals, you support majors, you support people all over the world that want to run tournaments for your game. And you give them that legitimacy, and you increase their entrant counts, because people will enter people will see an event is, you know, for points, and they will sign up. That is a thing. That is like the point. That's the point of all of this in the first place, is to, you know, kind of give that boost to people that wouldn't have those numbers before, and wouldn't have that viewership before, and wouldn't have that attention, right? That's where these companies, these devs have the opportunity to really push up the scene and lift them up, and they're missing the mark when it comes to these things, because they're focusing too much on our netcode is good, so we're just gonna make it all online. Horrible, right? To hammer this point home, because I'm not done, let's talk about Meta RD. Broski has this tweet, and I quote, "Lots of reasons the tour format is complete ass this year, but it's especially stupid that MENA is no closer to Capcom Cup qualification than your average O Tour, despite getting 2nd at EVO, 2nd at France Premiere, 4th at Singapore Premiere. MENA RD is easily top 5 player in Street Fighter 6, without question, right? He's traveled to all 3 offline premieres. He went to all 3. He did not win any of those 3. And because he did not win any of those 3, as Broski says, he is no closer to qualifying for Capcom Cup than you and me. I have not entered a single event for Capcom Cup at all. I'm just as close to qualifying as MenRD, at least when it comes to the offline. I think MenRD has entered some World Warriors, so he is on the leaderboard for that. But do you see a problem with this, right? It doesn't give you any point. They didn't even add points to the offlines. You don't gain points for the leaderboard by going and not winning. Do you guys see the problem here? Do you guys understand just how bad this is, right? This is the way to make players who are really, really strong not want to play your game and not want to spend their time and spend their money and spend their resources to go all over the world to compete in your event. Because like, how does this, not only this, right? He has these amazing placements. These placements are incredible. He's also last year's champ. He's the reigning Capcom Cup champion, right? He is not qualified right now. That's crazy. That is insane. Huge missed opportunity on Capcom's end. They really fucked up here. To me, this is probably the biggest fuck up, right? This is probably the biggest fuck up of all the ones that I've talked about thus far, because like the potential, right? The potential was so high, was so incredibly high. You have a huge prize pool, you have great marketing, you have great online, people are playing the event. This is the biggest fighting game in a very long time, right? And you squandered it by putting out this format. This does not make any sense. What would make way more sense, right? Here's constructive criticism. If you're not going to make it so that offlines matter way more and you make it so there's more means to qualify through offlines, if you're not going to do that, right? If you're not going to do that on the normal part of the tour, why not cut some of the World Warrior, right? What if we cut the World Warrior in half? What if we made it only 13 players and we took all the World Warrior, right? We took all the World Warriors that we took away, the 13 that we took away from them, and we put it in the LCQ. Even that would be better, I think, because the LCQ is at Capcom Cup, right? That means even if you aren't able to travel to all these offline premieres, right? And you're not able to put a ton of time into online for whatever reason, because there are people that are like that, you could still have a reasonable shot to qualify at the LCQ. There being a lot of slots at the LCQ, it makes it easier. It doesn't make it automatic, but it makes it a more feasible means of qualifying, right? And it's in an offline environment, and it's at Capcom Cup. So you would go from qualifying in the LCQ to playing in Capcom Cup that same weekend. You don't have to spend any extra on travel or anything like that, right? You're already there. You're already there. And so that just is way more reasonable in a lot of cases, right? Don't know why they didn't take that route. I think it would have been much better. I absolutely despise the way Capcom is handling this tour. And if you know anything about fighting games, you should too. If you care about competitive fighting games, like, we need to be vocal about them making changes to these formats, because like it matters way more than you think, right? A lot of people are thinking, you know, I'm not going to compete for $2 million, so I don't really care about, you know, I don't really care about the Capcom Pro Tour. Well, there's more to it than that, right? It's not just the players. It's not just about the players. It's about the TOs. It's about the community figureheads. It's about the content creators. It's about everyone. We're all in this together, right? And the less legitimate your Pro Tour is, the less there is to gain from the fighting game community in regards to that tour, right? If the tour is great and everyone is motivated about it and it creates great storylines and all that, then there's a bunch of content that comes out about it. You know, it has buzz on social media. That's marketing in and of itself. Everyone cares about it. Everyone tunes in. People, a lot of you probably didn't even know the France offline premiere happened this past weekend. There, for some reason, not only are they doing very, very small amounts of offline premieres, but it also feels like their marketing has not focused on them at all. Like, to me, an auto qualifier for Capcom Cup for $1 million, right? You should be marketing the shit out of that. There should be no one in the fighting game community that doesn't know this shit is happening. But for whatever reason, it really did slip through the cracks. There have been many people that I've seen talk on social media talking about, I didn't even know this was happening until I caught it live. I didn't see any posters. I didn't see any, you know, any advertisement, no trailers, no anything, right? That's a problem. That's a problem. And so they spent all this money on marketing by putting millions of dollars into the prize pool, but they weren't willing to take some of that money and put it towards the things that need to be focused on, i.e. the marketing for these smaller events. You know, these offline premieres are smaller than Capcom Cup, but they're still pretty important, it would turn out. And also creating just a good format that people actually want to participate in. You've demotivated so many people by doing it this way. You really, really have, Capcom. And I don't know, you guys will never watch this video, but this is a big fumble. And it's going to take a lot of fixing to get into the good graces of the people that feel slighted this first time around, right? Because the first World Tour for your event, honestly, guys, the first World Tour for your event is the most important, right? It sets the tone for the rest of the game's lifetime. Nobody ever forgets the first iteration of a World Tour. No, it just doesn't happen for any given installment because it's that important. You're the inaugural champion of the game. No matter what happens for the game's lifetime for then on, they're gonna look at you and be like, you know what? You did it first. And when you do it first, it has a ton of legitimacy because the first year of a game is usually when most people are playing. That matters. When everyone is playing before people decide to, you know, move on to other games, to greener pastures, right? You're the first person to win. That matters. That matters. Think about previous World Tour. Think about Dragon Ball FighterZ. A lot of your Dragon Ball FighterZ viewers, right? I bet you guys all remember who won the first World Tour. That guy's fucking godlike. Right? A lot of you probably care about the older World Tours more than you do the newer World Tours. Wonder why that is. These formats were better back then. The first World Tour for that game was horrible, though. Let's not talk about that. The second one, though, that shit was good. Capcom, please get your shit together. Please. This is horrid. Horrid. And on top of that, the last point I want to add to it, right? I will say this is a neutral. This is a neutral thing on World Tours, right? Capcom made the decision to not patch the game, right? To not patch the game throughout the first year of the tour. Now, why is this good? This is good because you're playing on the same version. Everyone is on equal playing field the entire World Tour, right? Other games like Dragon Ball FighterZ, right? Evo happened and then they patched the game afterwards. So literally qualifying on two different versions of the game, right? Capcom's not doing that. You're playing the same game from release to Capcom Cup. That's kind of a good thing because you let people actually develop counterplay, whatnot. They don't have to struggle and scramble to adjust to a random change, right? That you just decide on. They have to adjust the DLC characters, but generally people are more okay with that. Learning another matchup is less egregious than having to learn about, you know, a whole system mechanic change, right? Like that matters. That makes a big difference. And so that's a good thing for that reason, but also a bad thing because if you fuck up your World Tour to this extent, right? Now people super don't care. They really, really don't care. They feel like they have nothing to look forward to. They can't look forward to the World Tour. They can't look forward to a patch. They just have nothing. What are they going to do? Most of these people are just not going to play the game, or they're not going to take it as seriously. That's a bad thing. That kills all your momentum that you spent millions upon millions of dollars to build up in the first place. So like you can get away with not patching the game, right? If you give people other things to look forward to. This World Tour is not anything to look forward to right now. It's just not. It's just not, right? Missed the mark. Frustrating. I'm sorry. Now, talked about these three games. I'm going to give you guys an example of a World Tour that does it better. Now, I'm not going to claim that this game's World Tour is perfect, but I will say that it sets a better example of like what a World Tour should look like. And to those of you who are inexperienced in this, you're going to be like, wow, I don't know why other games just don't do that. Okay, let's look at it. We're going to talk about Tekken. Now, Tekken has had its own issues with its World Tour in terms of logistics and whatnot. But when we talk about the format of the Tekken World Tour, right, it's actually like a great example of like what a World Tour for a fighting game should look like. And the worst part about it, right, is that other games could just look at what they're doing and literally copy paste it. No one would complain. People would not be mad if they copy pasted this format. Promise. Let's talk about what makes it stand out from the tours that we talked about before, right? Okay, first of all, offlines. There's a lot of them. Their highest echelon of events, master events, right here. There's 11 of these. First of all, 11 of the highest tier events all over the world, right? And there's a lot of time in between, right? Evo Japan is where it started, end of March. Tiger Uppercut, which was the last of the master events, that just happened. Like literally just happened this past weekend, right? In November. That's a lot of time, right? 7 or 8 months, that's plenty of time for people to be able to designate, okay, I'm gonna go to this one, and then, you know, I might have to skip these next two, but I can go to this one and top. Okay, I came across some extra money, I can actually go to CEO as well, right? It's a lot of 11 master events. I'm sorry, I might be blocking here. Let me move myself a little bit. This is probably a better place to be, right? And so the master events, there's a lot of them. 11 of the highest tier events spread out to different regions, spread out in terms of dates, right? There's more time in between them generally. Good. It doesn't end there though, right? On top of the challenger, on top of the master events, we also have the challenger events. These are also offline. They're smaller, right? For example, we had First Attack that happened not too long ago. Summer Jam, right? Big E event. If you've been in the fighting game scene for a while, you know about Big E and how much he's grinded for running fighting game events. And you also know that Summer Jam's not the biggest event in the world, right? His events aren't super omega huge. We're not talking about, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 concurrent attendees. We're talking about, 500 or 600. And that's like the case for First Attack as well, right? So like these smaller events that do matter, these are like big regionals, right? They're tournaments that people know about. They're tournaments that people care about, right? They're the second tier of events, which means there's a lot of legitimacy here, right? This is the type of stuff that makes people justify, like, I wasn't gonna go to Summer Jam, but now that I know that it's on the Tekken World Tour, right? I'm gonna make that travel. I'm gonna make that trip, right? That matters a ton. And there's a decent amount of these as well. There's 11 of these, right? 11 master events, 11 challenger events. We already have 22 offline events, right? 22 offline events. Capcom has 3. Mortal Kombat has 4. Dragon Ball has 7. Tekken has 22. That alone should demonstrate, right? It has more than all those games combined. That should demonstrate, like, this is just better on that alone. Even if we didn't even talk about it further, right? Even if we didn't talk about it further, it's just better. And you should all be able to see that clearly. But on top of that, they also have the dojo system. Let me move down here. Sorry. And zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. Right? So they have the dojo system. The dojo system is opt-ins, right? And so like more and more games have been adopting the opt-in format of like, if you're someone that is a local TO or something like that, a regional TO, and you run online events, you run offline events, whatever it may be. If you're running a consistent, or it doesn't even have to be consistent, right? If you're running an event of any kind, as long as you follow the Tekken World Tour rules, you can opt in to have your event count towards the World Tour, right? No matter who it is, no matter where you are, right? Because it's region free. They're not region locking at all. So it doesn't matter where you're from, you can just opt in and your event can matter. And sometimes it can matter a lot, right? It can matter a lot. And so that gives people motivation to run events at online, not only online, but at a local level, right? And you actually count for points on top of that. Like it's like legitimately like this could make or break someone, right? Someone that, 2 players that both travel to a bunch of master events and challenger events. Also, what's up, Thespian? I'm sorry, I didn't say hello, but people that are traveling to master events, people that are traveling to challenger events, right? The difference between 2 people that both travel to a bunch of them, but one enters a bunch of dojo events and one doesn't, the guy that enters a bunch of dojo events can have a huge advantage. A huge advantage. And if dojos were only offline, that would be like, it would feel kind of unfair in that regard, right? Because if it's only offline, then not everyone has scenes that get 96 entrants, right? Like, think about that. But they balance it, right? They balance it. They balance the dojos by actually having strong offline infrastructure, right? They have a really strong offline infrastructure through opting in, and the challenger events and master events being so spread out and there being so many of them make it so even though dojo events are focused on that offline, right? In fact, dojo events, I do believe right here says, yep, individual tournament organizers supply their offline event to be recognized as dojo events. So dojos are offline, but it's not as severe because there's 22 of the higher tier events, right? They're spread out. There's more opportunities to go to them. It's more reasonable for people to be able to go to multiple because there's just that many as opposed to 3, as opposed to 4. And there's a ton of events that are not on this list, right? That you could probably come up with off the top of your head, right? For offlines, and they can opt in. There are plenty of Tekken events that get 96 plus entrants that aren't on this list. There are plenty. There are plenty, right? And those events get that legitimacy by being added to the dojo system. And so that increased their entrance count, right? And makes their stream more legitimate, gets more viewers, people care more. All of this together, right? I'm hammering this point home because it's easy to copy. It's easy to copy. In fact, Dragon Ball FighterZ is by the same Bandai Namco runs both. They run the Tekken World Tour and the Dragon Ball FighterZ World Tour. Now, they were different people working on them in the first place. In fact, I'm pretty sure the Tekken World Tour, funny enough, you guys might not know this, but Rick, the person that runs Combo Breaker and the person that runs Evo, he's the guy that worked on this format for Tekken World Tour. Before he became head of Evo, he was working on Tekken World Tour. He's part of the reason that this format is so good, right? Is it perfect? No, it's not. It's not perfect, right? What's missing? I do wish that there was some type of online support here, right? Some type. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be huge. Even if you wanted to add a online dojo extra, right? It doesn't even have to follow the same point structure as the offlines. But if there were dojo onlines, right, that were worth maybe, I don't know, a half of the points, let's say. Half the points that the offlines were, right? And you also cap the amount of points you can gain from those onlines. So in no way does it ever become more legitimate of a means to qualify than the offlines. Then I think there's a place for that too. Because I do think that there's probably still plenty of people that would love to participate in the World Tour in some capacity, even if they don't think they have a chance of qualifying. Feeling like you're a part of the tour adds so much to a tour, guys. Right? It adds so much to the experience to know that, like, you know, you're a part of this ongoing tour, that people are fighting and trying to become stronger and trying to qualify. Like, the difference between feeling like you're a part of that and not feeling like you're a part of it is tremendous in a grassroots community like fighting games. So I do wish that there was some type of online involvement with this, but this alone, right, is the right direction, right? It's the right direction for a World Tour. These other games that I've talked about could look at this and like copy paste, and it would instantly make their tours better. Instantly. In reality, it should be somewhere in between because, you know, Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, they have great netcode. You can have onlines be a part of the tour. It just should never be the most important thing. It doesn't make sense that how many people qualify from onlines in Street Fighter? It's 48 total, only 3, well, 4 from offline. So 44 people out of the 48, right, from online stuff. Right? Why is that 11? Why is there 11 times the people qualifying online as opposed to offline? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. Yes, your netcode is good, but come on, bro. The formula is right here. This is the future, right? This is what we should be pushing towards. I want Tekken, next time they do their tour, hopefully their tour for 8, because obviously 8 is on the horizon, right? I want them to take this, keep this exactly the same. You could even add more offlines. That'd be great. I'd love to see there be 30 offlines, right? Maybe, I don't know, 10 master events, 20 challenger events, or 15 and 15, whatever you need to do. There's nothing ever wrong with more events, right? It's only a good thing to add more. Right? So I'd like to see them increase it a little bit. They don't even have to go all the way to 30, but like, yeah, add a little bit more offlines, because I just think that's a good thing. You can spread out the regions more too. That's really important, right? If you're trying to be a world tour and you're trying to really hit all the hot spots of where, like, you know, these games are played and where it's supported in regions, like, you gotta have a lot of events, because the world's a big place. The world's a big place. There's a lot of space to cover. So like, I would like to see them do that, and then also try to incorporate some type of online involvement. Tekken 8 is confirmed to have better netcode than 7, I believe. I do believe that they're doing rollback, and so like, hopefully that's the direction they decide to lean. Will they? I don't know. I hope so though. I really do hope so. But yeah, that's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. World tours are so important, so important for fighting game scenes, and it's just a damn shame that it feels like so many of them are just not hitting the nail on the head. They're not only not hitting the nail on the head, but it just feels like they aren't willing to just go to other tours and be like, oh, this works and this is what people like, so we're just gonna do that. They want to go and be unique and quirky and do some crazy off the wall format that seems, you know, new and inventive. You're trying to reinvent the wheel here. Just do what works. Do what makes sense for fighting games. Support the offlines. Support the onlines as well, just to a lesser extent. As long as you do that, most of the time, it's going to be hard to fuck up. It's going to be hard to fuck up, as long as your rules make sense. But that is it for this edition of Scoops, ladies and gentlemen. If you've enjoyed this talk about the World Tour, please be sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment letting me know what you think about each game's World Tour, because there's I've seen a lot of takes. Some people, I look at their takes and I'm like, you're crazy. You're crazy. But other people, I'm like, no, that's pretty reasonable. That's why it was really important for me to pull up people's tweets during this talk. But we'll continue to monitor things as they progress. We have new fighting games coming out, Grand Blue, Uni, Tekken 8, right? I'm sure there's going to be some type of involvement for tours of them at some point, probably. So we will take a look at those as they come out, and, you know, we'll make our judgments when the time comes. Until next time, friends, thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time.